Hi, Darren Jaskowiak here, broker-owner of RE/MAX Advisors. We have been getting a lot of questions about the marketplace and how this virus is affecting home values and sales activity. Now, I don't know anything about viruses, medicine, or healthcare other than what my grandmother and common sense tells me, so I'm not going to speak about that. I do, however, know a bit about real estate. Now, how the real estate markets will react to this particular situation, that remains to be seen, but we can look at past market disruptions and how those were dealt with, which is frankly the best anybody can do. Now, I have perspective and facts on the real estate market from past economic downturns and what is taking place right up to the minute this is recorded. Hopefully, this information will allow you to see for yourself what the likely outcome is, and I think you will be pleased. Now, the saying, feelings without facts equal fiction, was never more true, so let's try to put aside our feelings for a moment and focus on some facts. Now, as of February, which was only 30 days ago, and now seems like 30 years ago, the housing market was very solid. Home sales comfortably above 12 months prior. I want to step to the side for a second and point out that home sales do not move like the stock market. They are much, much more stable. In fact, nobody in our area or anywhere that I know of lost 30% of their paper value like the stock market did over the last couple weeks. In fact, here locally, we have seen a robust market continue even this last week with 313 homes having offers accepted on them, putting us on track to exceed last year's sales for this same time frame. Now, looking back at the housing market during the Great Recession, the market fundamentals were not very good. We had an oversupply of housing, largely driven by an oversupply of money. For instance, I had tenants that 12 months earlier barely made the criteria to rent, and a year later were buying new homes, probably using the liar loans or some other unusually loose underwriting criteria. State whatever income you want to get a mortgage regardless of if it's true or not. That simply was not a good thing. And today, we are just not seeing that. In fact, what I have seen is that the majority of home buyers are very conservative in their finances, and lenders are also very precise on what it takes to get a loan as far as documentation and underwriting criteria. It's also worth pointing out that in the 1980 recession, home prices rose. In the 1990 recession, home prices rose. After the 9/11 recession, home prices increased. People who owned and held on to real estate did well during those tough economic times. The only exception is the 2007-2008 housing-induced recession. We did see price declines, and rather significant ones in certain markets, and our area was one of those. Once again, this was caused by easy and loose lending, fueling overbuilding. But if you held onto real estate, even if you bought at the height of the market, you did well in time. Home builders at that time were overbuilding nationally with 1.7 million homes just prior to the recession, combined with a huge oversupply of money. I mean, heck, you didn't need any money, income, or credit to get a loan then. It was just ridiculous. And since then, home builders have been largely underproducing. Now, I know what you're saying right now. Darren, everywhere I drive around here, there's building going on. Well, which is true. But remember that there were very few homes built between 2009 and 2015, not to mention apartments, and our population kept growing, along with millennials getting ready to enter the housing market. The millennial market is now the largest group of home buyers ever. To bring this to a local level, because all real estate is local, and to put it in perspective, the number of new homes built prior in 2005 as a percentage of the population was nearly double what it is today. New homes built in 2005 were 1.4% of the population, and last year they were 0.84%. Builders could not build twice as many homes today, even if they wanted to. So what I'm trying to say is that our housing fundamentals are very strong and secure, especially in our area. Now, we don't know how long this economic quarantine is going to last, but if it were to last 1 to 2 months with lackluster home sales, we could expect a pretty strong rebound in all sectors, including housing. And remember, we entered this economic quarantine with a shortage of homes, and we will exit with a shortage. The other thing this has done is place an emphasis on your home as a shelter and a refuge. My daughter asked me a few weeks ago if her and her husband should buy a home now or wait, and my recommendation was to first look at their jobs relative to job security. And I think this advice works for just about anyone. Are you secure in your job and industry sector? Many jobs are secure. So for those people buying now while rates are incredibly low and other factors that may lean toward a buyer's favor now more than a month ago, that's probably a pretty good choice. However, if your job and industry is in a sector that is questionable, then I would defer that decision until things stabilize. Now, Gay Corraton is a research economist for NAR, and she put together a very well-done paper on which states have a large fraction of industries affected by the coronavirus. She highlighted 4 economic sectors that are vulnerable to this issue. Well, the first one being arts, entertainment, recreation, accommodation, and food services. The second, air transportation. The third, retail trade. And the fourth, real estate, rental, and leasing. Now, Idaho fares pretty well in most of these categories. For instance, the first section, entertainment and accommodation and food service, Idaho accounts for about 4.1% share of the state's gross domestic product, which is about mid-range in the states, but compared to our neighbors to the south, Nevada, it's not surprisingly, they're at the top of the list at 16.5% of their GDP, with only 5.5% of the population. On the second segment, air transportation, we are doing fairly well, as that accounts for only about 0.3% of gross domestic product. And about 2,000 people are employed in that segment, with many of our neighbors relying much heavier on that. And in the retail trade category, we have a much healthier share of employment at 10.8%. But this category includes physical places like retail stores, department stores, and non-store establishments like online retailers. Now, when I look deeper into this, it also includes grocery stores. Now, you don't need to be an economist to know that certain retail stores will have much lower traffic during this quarantine. And online retailers may see a spike, and you only need to make a trip to find a roll of toilet paper to know that grocery stores are seeing huge sales. Now, the last segment of real estate, rental, and leasing, Idaho is on par with our neighbor states at 13.8% of our GDP. Now, it would make sense that if someone didn't have to move, they probably wouldn't during this time. And this has been reflected in a quick flash poll I did with property managers who said they are seeing reduced applications over this last week. Now, as far as home sales are concerned this week, we have seen 313 offers get accepted on them with a median days on market at just 4 days. This puts us comfortably ahead of where sales were last year. So for the large part, home sales have remained strong. This is not surprising when you consider that this virus has placed an emphasis on home and what home is and how much of a haven it is. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if some people wanted a larger home because of all the kids are home, or we have many people now working from home, that a different one will be needed to fit their lifestyle. Now, no one knows how long it will take for all this to play out. But one thing is for certain. It will pass, and things will get back to normal. As far as housing is concerned, let me quote Dr. Lawrence Yun. In case you don't know, Dr. Yun is the chief economist and senior vice president of research at the National Association of Realtors. He's frankly considered one of the top economists in the United States and maybe the world. Dr. Yun creates NAR's forecasts and participates in many economic forecasting panels, among them the Blue Chip Council and the Wall Street Journal Forecasting Survey. He also participates in the Industrial Economics Discussion Group at the Joint Center for Housing Studies at Harvard. He also appears regularly on financial news outlets and is a frequent speaker throughout the world. And he's testified before Congress. In fact, if you watch any financial news, you've probably seen him as a guest on C-SPAN, Washington Journal, and many other outlets. So, he says in an interview just last week, if the economic shutdown is of short duration, it will be just a delayed spring buying season. It could be in August or September when we see that normal spring buying season occur. And the fact that we are in a very accommodating monetary policy means mortgage rates will be at historic lows. The most recent data shows about 3.3%. We could even go down to 3%. Now, I found it interesting when he said that half of Americans don't have any exposure to the stock market, so they're just looking at the low mortgage rates. And when I thought about it more, it made sense. It's just that so much of our media is out of New York that the stock market gets a big emphasis in that arena. Then he added, even if it takes a little longer to contain it, there is such a solid fundamental for the real estate market, things will play out very well over the long haul. So with that said, let me sign off by another quote from Roy Bennett. Instead of worrying about what you cannot control, shift your energy to what you can create. And attitude is a choice. Happiness is a choice. Optimism is a choice. Kindness is a choice. Giving is a choice. Respect is a choice. Whatever choice you make makes you. Choose wisely. Thank you.